Don Landry once said, there are a few things that are certain in life, and one is that change is inevitable. For some of you watching today, your loved ones have just received some debilitating news about a medical diagnosis, and you don't know what to do. And for others of you, the coast is clear. I promise you, whether now or later, you want to watch this video. It's very important. Hi, I'm Jolly Abraham, host of the Jolly Abraham Show, and I want to talk to you today about how to take care of your sick loved ones efficiently and effectively, always keeping them at the forefront or as the leader of their medical journey and we as their guide. I've invited my friend Don Landry, who is an expert in this topic of caretaking, or shall I say care coaching. Don is an award-winning and respected business professional who spent 27 plus years in Houston's corporate real estate industry. And in 2017, she founded her own company called Authenticity with a Z, where she acts as a business growth strategist. She became a Gallup-Certified Clifton strengths coach and leveraged that tool to provide consulting, training, and coaching services. Little did she know, however, that she would tap into her professional and personal skills as her husband of 21 plus years, Daran, went through several terminal health battles. She talks about all this and more in her new book called Armored, a memoir with inspirational and practical life strategies. I'm so excited because we also have a free gift for someone special. And I'm going to get into details about that at the end of the show. So make sure you stay with me. Hi, Don. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jolly. It's good to see you.
You too. Well, Don, I'd love to just dive right in. In your book, Armored, you have talked about your husband, Daran, got diagnosed with 3 debilitating medical conditions, each progressively worse than the other. Can you just talk about each one for us?
Sure. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because there's a lot of stuff. So it's just funny because I am not a medical practitioner. I don't play one on TV. I am a business professional. My sister's a nurse, but I always say God has a funny sense of humor, and he gave me this man who has, from a very young age, has had a lot of medical issues. We've been friends. Actually, this month, it's 26 years that we're friends. We've been together for 23 years. This year will be our 23rd year together and 18 years married. So, but his first really bad health issue was when he was only 30 years old. And so he had a reaction to an asthma drug that really put him in ICU for 5 days. And so it's something called Guillain-Barré syndrome. So what Guillain-Barré syndrome is basically, it's when the body goes into attack mode to fight a virus, and then the virus goes away, but the body stays in fight mode. And so that's really what happened to him. It was just this fluke reaction to this drug, this asthma drug. And so fortunately, he overcame that. But I learned some really valuable lessons really in our early 30s before we were even really married. And then at 38 years old, he was diagnosed with stage 4 head and neck cancer. And it was stage 4 because it had migrated to his lymph nodes. They never found the primary. So it was a very aggressive type of treatment that he had in terms of surgery and exploratory surgery, and then 6 weeks worth of chemo, and then 7 weeks worth of radiation, where they radiated all of this area here 5 days a week for 7 weeks. He lost 85 pounds. It was very aggressive in terms of the treatment. So there were major lessons that were learned there. It's just this slow build, right? And then the last of which he was almost at the 10-year mark of being cancer-free. And at 48 years old, he had a stroke. And he was completely fine that morning, went to the gym. He was going to the gym 6 days a week at that point. I talked to him that afternoon, a half an hour before the stroke, and he was completely fine. And then he wasn't. And the blessing in all of that is that my uncle who lives with us, we moved my uncle in to take care of him. And here's the thing, again, God ordained. My uncle, but for my uncle being home, he spotted the stroke. The ambulance was at our house in 15 minutes, and he was able to get my husband to the hospital. And within that 2-hour window, here's the PSA: if you can catch a stroke within that first 2 hours, you can get a drug in your system called TPA, and it not only stops the stroke in its tracks, but it starts to reverse the side effects. So know the warning signs of strokes, because it makes a difference. I shudder to think what would have happened had he not gotten there in time, because he was 100% paralyzed on the right side and unable to speak just after the stroke. And so he went into surgery. That was a 4-hour surgery. They had to put, stents in his carotid because he was 100% blocked. And so I knew nothing about brains and strokes and all that other stuff. And I had a quick lesson. Every experience was a building block on the next one.
Wow. And, in your book, Dawn, you give such practical pieces of advice and wisdom. I loved it.
Thank you.
The two practical pieces that I took away in the book that were so helpful for me was keeping an accordion folder when your loved one gets sick. To something that you can take to and from doctor's visits. And you talk about putting up encouraging photos, encouraging quotes, messages to them, whether they are in their hospital room, in the hospital, or even at home, whether they go to therapy or their chemo and radiation treatment. Can you talk about each of those two areas and tell us the importance of why those are necessary?
Yeah, they're very tactical, right, Jolly?
Yes, I loved it.
Extremely tactical, but that's the way that my brain works. Winks also. But it's how organized can I be? And if I start off organized, then I actually can accomplish everything that I need to accomplish, because I still have to do the work on behalf of my clients too. And the accordion folder was just this necessity. And in terms of tracking all of the business cards for the contacts, all of the valuable information, the prescriptions, everything else. And then also what I kept in the accordion folder was a notebook. So then that way I could document every single medical office visit. You become the advocate on behalf of the patient, because and I learned that in the cancer battle, because towards the end of it, he was in so much pain. He was on so many medications that he was foggy, but also because when it's very personal to you and you get in that environment with the doctor, you can't think straight in terms of asking and thinking forward, 3 steps ahead. And so it became incumbent upon me to need to be there and to be that ambassador and advocate on behalf of him, but also to document it out. And when he was in the cancer battle, he would meet with his doctor once a week. And so all throughout the other 6 days of the week, if something would come up and he had a symptom or a side effect or something like that, I was able to put it in there. So then that way, when we got that precious time in front of the doctor, I knew exactly what we needed to talk to him or her about specifically. It was really important to do that in the stroke battle when he couldn't speak for himself and I was his voice.
That's so good. So in the accordion folder, just to recap, we are putting, what is some pertinent information again? You're putting like insurance information, the specialist names.
Yeah, you're putting the specialist names, their contact information. Now, so this was in 2009. And the way we kept in touch with the doctors in 2009 versus the way that we get in touch with the doctors in 2022, it's dramatically changed because we have portals and we don't have to play phone tag with doctors anymore. So there's some elements of it that have migrated digitally by all means, but it's especially important to keep track of all of the medications that they're on, all of the, procedures that they've had, having a central repository of that. And I actually have a document that I utilize that I created. I call it the anatomy graphic. And I have one for him. I have one for myself. I have one for my uncle now. Every surgical procedure that we've had, all the medications that we are on, I have copies of it in my wallet. I have a copy of his in his wallet. So then that way, if something happens and we're in the emergency room, I don't have to remember on command what medicines he's on and what surgical procedures he's had, because his list is long. I actually joked with him, there's no more room on the page. You got the second half, because he'll be 51 next month. I'm like, the second half is going to be so much healthier than the first half. You've gotten it all the way. We've replaced all the parts, and the second half is going to be so much easier. So we're not going to page number 2, basically.
That's good. I love how you declared that. So good. And so talk to me about putting encouraging messages. I loved that.
Yeah. So that's part of my gifting. I need to own that because I am a coach for a living, and I didn't realize it. I just innately, he was on day. So he had the stroke two evenings before Thanksgiving in 2019. So by that Friday, when I made it back home, instinctively, because I just kept seeing him, and he was lying in the bed. He couldn't speak at that point. He couldn't move. He had regained some wiggling of his toes on the right hand side, but that was it. He couldn't move his right arm at all, and so he was just staring at this blank wall in ICU. And I got the idea, I need to remind him who he is.
Wow.
And so when I came home, I printed out all these pictures of us and our life together. And we love to travel. We started this tradition on our very first wedding anniversary. Our gift to one another is time every year for our anniversary, and it's to travel and take a trip. So we have beautiful, beautiful pictures from all over the world. And what I did was I printed those out. I took some freezer tape and I posted them up there. And then I posted really encouraging words. I basically commandeered the whiteboard that the nurses use that they update with the new nurse's name. They weren't using the bottom half. So I spoke words of encouragement to him. I'm like, this is not your story. You are a warrior. And I just put all of these words of encouragement back to him. And so the beautiful thing that did was it not only showed him right there, because at the beginning, he didn't even want to watch the TV because too much noise was too much. It was just any stimulation in his brain was just too much. So all he did was just sit there and look at the wall all day long. And at some points he would cry, and so it personalized him to the nursing staff and to the other medical professionals. So they'd walk in and they'd see a picture of us in Alaska in front of a waterfall or something else. So they remembered him also. The other thing that I did was he has context. So from a Clifton strength standpoint, I know his Clifton strengths. I know my Clifton strengths because I'm a coach specific to that assessment also. And so for him, he likes to look back, to look forward. And so I documented the milestones for the day. Every single day, he was in ICU and inpatient rehab. And so what do I mean by that? I documented, had just blank pieces of paper. And for that day, I would say, wiggled your right hand, your index finger for the first time, or, walked 10 feet away from the bed, or all of that. And then at the end of the week, I would go back to what had happened at the beginning of the week to remind him, look how far you've come in only a matter of the last 6 days. And it actually would build him up. That's why I call myself a care coach and not a caregiver, because I was coaching him all along the way. He's a super achiever. He's very much a milestone achiever kind of person, very goal oriented. And all the time, I'm just reminding him of who he is and what he's working for and how other people are watching. The other piece of it is that I utilize Facebook to document our journey, to ask for prayers more than anything. But then we have a big family and a big friend set, not only here in Houston where we live, but in Louisiana where we're from. And so trying to keep everyone up to date was very, very important. So I just kept telling him, people are praying for you all across the world. You've come too far. God did not take you this far to leave you. You are a testimony on his behalf. And he just received that, and it just fired him up to get to this point.
I love that. I love that you call yourself a care coach. I'd never heard that word, but when you said it and you said why you're a care coach and not necessarily a caretaker, because you allowed him to be the leader of his journey, and you were just the guide. You were just the aid, and wanted to be an excellent aid to help support him, but he was able to take charge and direct you on what he wanted.
Yeah.
Is that true?
It's absolutely true. But the only way you can do it is you absolutely have to know each other, right? You have to know one another and know how to coach them, when to push, when to pull, when to, throttle back specifically, especially in the beginning. I was talking for him. So our relationship is it's crazy to think they tell you to thank God for all of the challenges. And when you're in the challenges, it's really hard to thank him for the challenges, right?
Yeah.
But sitting here 2+ years later, I can say, man, I am so thankful that we are on the other side of that. And I am so proud of the journey. And our marriage is so strong because of everything that we've gone through. It was strong after the cancer, and I saw it, and we were bonded in a different kind of way, having gone through that together. But now we are like appendages of one another. Our foundation is so strong because of it. Because when you are entrusted to speak on behalf of someone else, you get it wrong. You have to have a sense of humor, because you are not going to get it right all of the time.
Yeah.
And then B, you have to know one another and know the desires and the what they would want, and how, because sometimes you're making life and death choices on their behalf.
Sure. Yeah, I like how you said you have to know one another. But a question I would ask you, Dawn, is what do you do when you're taking care of a mother or mother-in-law or a sister-in-law? What do you do? How do you get to know them well?
Well, that's when proactivity comes into play, right? And so what I mean by that is, what are you doing in your life with your loved ones right now to get yourself prepared? And because there are people, there are people in my life right now, if I was entrusted to care for them, I don't know them well enough. So if you are, I would imagine, so I have to guess on this, because my experience is very much the experience that it is because of the relationship that I have and my husband and I have with one another, with the unit that we are. But I would imagine if we weren't as tight, that the first thing that, if you are entrusted in terms of that type of relationship, is setting it up in terms of expectations from the very beginning in a very strong way, to say, look, I'm going to get this wrong. I know I'm going to do some things that, that will hurt your feelings, or vice versa. And we just need to get to the other side. And so I'm not going to mean to, but we have to have a forthrightness and an honesty and a transparency with one another, because our hearts, when you're in that type of situation, your heart has to be whole to be able to do it.
Yeah.
It has to come from love.
Setting expectations from the beginning and really just loving them through the process. That's good. I think it's really important, because just to share my story briefly, my dad got sick in 2018. He was at the top of the year, he was diagnosed with stage 4 lower esophageal stomach cancer. And me and my sisters, we're all in the medical field. So we were very much like, let's attack this aggressively. Let's do chemo, radiation, all this stuff. We had our plan. But then Dad said, no, I don't want anything. And we were all shocked. We were like, what do you mean? Like, we wanted to extend his life, but Dad was ready to go.
Yeah. He said, let me just go be with Jesus.
Exactly. He says, I want nothing. This is going to go how it's going to go. And I just want to be around friends and family. I don't want to be in the hospitals in and out with chemo and radiation. I don't want the side effects. And that was a blow to us. But the truth was, we had to realize it's my dad's journey, my dad's diagnosis, and we have to honor him. We have to allow him to do and be how he wants to. And we can't, of course, we wanted my dad to live as long as possible, but we had to allow him to be the leader of his journey, and we had to honor his requests. So I think it's so true just to love them through the process, let them lead, and set expectations when you don't have that necessarily close-knit relationship. Dawn, when we talk about taking care of our sick loved ones, high-powered women, I know that we want to do everything. We want to take control. We want things to be right. So a lot of times we do it ourselves. 2 heart lessons that I got from the book that you wrote, Armored, was surrender and allow others to help us. In regards to surrender, what does that mean exactly? Like, what are we surrendering to, or like, who are we surrendering to?
Yeah, well, it's surrendering to the Holy Spirit and asking him for guidance. Every time that I tried to take things into my own hands, it always I messed it up big time. And it was only when I would just breathe through it and just know that I just like sit there and ask for prayers, having those prayer partners, those sisters in faith. I mean, we have a huge network. We are very blessed with a great network in Houston. And, I could put out a call for prayers for hundreds of people, but it's also having that internal group, those core people that I was reminded of this one incident of last week where he had to go back to ICU from the inpatient rehab facility. And I did not know, because he was bleeding. He was basically bleeding out. His blood pressure went from 80 to 42 and I never in any of his journeys did I think I was going to lose him. And that day I thought I was going to lose him. It was a bad day. And so immediately I called one of my friends and I'm like, I'm lost. I don't know where I am. So she got on a map. She got on MapQuest and literally guided me to the hospital because the ambulance had already gone. And so before I knew it, she was right there at the hospital with me. And what I kept telling, and so people just came. It was just amazing. People are amazing. And, but the other piece of it that I kept saying is God didn't take him this far to leave him. There's too many people watching. And so it's being careful of what you're saying and what you're putting out there when you do surrender to. And so being very mindful of that. So it is surrendering to the Holy Spirit. I didn't know that at the very beginning in his very first journey, but I do know that now. It's making sure that taking that advice and the counsel of doctors is fantastic, but making sure that you go to the ultimate healer as well is really, really important.
What were you doing initially where you weren't surrendering, and what did it look like to surrender?
The facility that they transferred him to, they were overwhelmed, and he was not in the ER, and some of the equipment was not working. And so I was trying to get him transferred to the TMC and using my network to do it. And it was a forced, instead of flow, instead of peace, it was forced. That whole afternoon was forced.
So when you don't surrender, it looks like force, right? So
yeah.
things are forced. So that's an indication, hey, I'm not surrendering to the process.
Yeah.
I'm forcing things to happen a certain way. And that can lead to stress, right? And so when you flow, there's peace. You're just going with the process, you're allowing God to move.
Absolutely.
How do we allow other people to help us? Because that's very difficult because we want it done right and well. So how do we let go?
That was a big lesson that I learned in the cancer battle, quite honestly. I had all these people that were saying, let me help. What can we do? You know, da, da, da. And I kept saying, no, got it. Just pray, you know, not just, and now I know it's not just pray, please pray first. And when it wasn't until my uncle's friend who told me, who had gone through her own breast cancer battle, who told me, people aren't asking you for you. And they are asking you a little bit for you, but they want to be part of your journey. Let them be part of your journey. It blesses them to be a blessing to you. That was the major lesson that I learned, whether it's, you know, allowing people to bring you food. We had a friend of ours that, she is an interior decorator. She's now since passed. It's one of the most precious memories that I have. She basically said, let me come and decorate your house for the holidays. And she's used all of my decorations. And I said, well, I'm not going to let you do. She's like, because he finished his cancer journey with the radiation and everything, like 10 days before Christmas that year of 2009. And so she used all of our decorations and decorated our house with me on a Saturday. And it was beautiful because we were able to enjoy it. So people get really creative if you allow them to be part of that journey with you. It was the same thing in the stroke battle. I just opened it up and said, here's where we need. And so if you can be specific in the ask, in that, you know, here are the areas that I need the most, whether it's getting him to and from, you know, physical occupational speech therapy because he couldn't drive at the time, or it's we need food, or I had people deliver groceries to our house because I hadn't been in a grocery store in 4 weeks. You know, those sorts of things were really important to kind of keep the machine going behind the scenes in our house. People donated to our Amazon account, so I was able to buy dog food for our dog. It's just really amazing. But the piece of it is knowing I'm only human and I have to let other people. And then here's the other thing, thanking them and praying for them for the blessings that they are on your behalf. That's the close of the circle is, you know, praying for those blessings of those people that are in your life.
I love it. That's so good. You know, Dawn, you talk about 10 really phenomenal battle strategies at the end of the book. Can you briefly talk about your top 3?
Oh, so it's so funny you asked this question, Jolly, because I had the opportunity yesterday twice to give one of the bits of advice that I'm about to share right now. And it is, don't worry till it's time to worry. And
I love that.
That is a huge lesson. In both cases, these people were fighting medical battles of their own selves, their personally, and they asked me to pray for them, which I am praying for them in and of itself. But they are in the part of the program where they are still in the assessment phase. So they don't have the answers yet. And so it's praying and giving peace and asking for Jehovah Shalom to give them that comfort overall, praying for that wisdom to the Holy Spirit to give them that guidance and direction, not only for themselves, but also for their medical providers, but then also praying that they stay in a peaceful zone, specifically knowing and not being stressed out, because the stress actually adds a different dimension. And what I've learned in the process is 98%, maybe more than that, of the stuff that I can conjure in my head does not come to fruition. Yeah. And I come from a long line of worry warts. I call them worry warriors, you know, and they are very close to me. They know who they are. I don't have to name them. But that's their natural inclination, is to jump to the negative. And I'm like, nope, not going there. Because I mean, I can't tell you the number of bad things that doctors warned us about Daran, and none of those things came true. And I could have spent a lot of really frenetic energy thinking about those. So I don't worry till it's time to worry.
Good.
Personally, as well as for him. And that's a big piece of advice. The other piece of advice is to celebrate all of the milestones and know along the way, every day is a milestone. Every hug that you get from your loved one is a gift. There is not a hug that I get from my husband that I don't thank as a gift, because he couldn't hug me he gives great hugs. And after the stroke, he couldn't fully hug me. He couldn't kiss me. At first I thought he was mad at me, but he couldn't pucker his lips to kiss me because of the paralysis. I don't take those for granted. I don't take the little celebrations of things for granted. So don't take those for granted. And then one of the most important things is don't forget to take care of yourself.
That's good.
And the piece of it, I mean, and you know, and it's the whole cliche, put your oxygen mask on before you put, you know, it's all of those things, right? But that's the piece that you forget. And the uncool thing that I'm going to say is that you can lose yourself. And so making sure that you're carving out a piece of yourself. What do I mean by that? In the cancer battle, I became the woman whose husband had cancer. And and I had to go to therapy, not had to, but I went to therapy about a year after his cancer, after he was, you know, stated cancer free and everything else, because I lost myself in that battle.
You lost who you were, your identity.
I lost who I was. And it's fantastic that I was so, like I was talking about in the beginning, our foundation was so strong and we were a unit and everything else, but I didn't know who I was as an individual anymore. And that's the piece of it throughout the stroke battle. Even in the midst of it, I tried to pull myself out and carve out the smallest time for myself. You know, a lot of it was my Bible study with my sisters in Christ and making sure, because they reminded me of who I am. Just like I was reminding him of who he is, they were reminding me. And the other piece of it is to give yourself grace. Because no one, you're a medical provider, you're a healthcare trained person. I'm not. And so I was beating myself up in the inside. And it wasn't until they pointed that out to me where I was just like, oh, I'm not. And I call her the drill sergeant. She pounds on me. She sits on my shoulder. So I would envision flicking her off my shoulder, just because she was berating me the way, like, you should be able to handle this. How can you not handle your company and him and all these other moving pieces? And I was so exhausted. And so I say all of that, make sure you give yourself some grace.
Dawn, wow. So I'm like, I could sit here and talk to you all day. Ladies, this book, Armored, is such a fantastic read. It is just practical nuggets of wisdom on how to take care of your loved one and do it well. Dawn, thank you so much for being on this show. It's truly such a pleasure, such a joy. And folks, I'm so excited because Dawn has been so kind and generous as to gift a very special woman with a free autographed copy of her book. So in order to be eligible for this, we're going to have a drawing, and you're going to have to do 4 things. I want you to share this video with 2 people that you know really needs to watch it. I want you to give me a thumbs up and leave down in the comments below the word care coach with your email address. And the people that do that, you're going to be entered into a drawing, and we're going to draw names next Friday, January 24th, and we will reveal the winner then. Dawn, really quick, I want to ask you, how can people get in contact with you and order their copy of your book?
Thank you for asking, Jolly. Before I go there, I just want to say that God put it on my heart to write Armored. I call it a her because she has her own persona now. She just flowed out of me in the year 2020. It was cathartic. It was a cathartic experience just to be able to share in this kind of way. So it is very much a privilege and honor to share the book and then give it away on your behalf. And thank you for asking. It is available on Amazon, as well as if you want to find out more about me, you can go to Dawn F. Landry. That's Dawn F as in Frank Landry.com.
Okay, great. And ladies, we will have that down in the show notes below where you can buy a copy of her book and also get in touch with Dawn. Thank you so much, Dawn. I will see you later.
Thank you, Jolly.
Bye.